The siren wails. It tears through the tranquil air of the small Atlantic Bay harbor. On the damp dock, still glistening with morning dew, a silver-haired man sits quietly on a wooden bench. His hands cradle an old camera. He is George McConnell, a U.S. Navy veteran, once part of a top-secret mission in 1968. This morning, as he prepared to set sail as usual on his wooden boat, Liberty Lens, the Coast Guard suddenly closed in. No warning given, they sealed his boat, accusing him of unauthorized commercial activity. Why would a veteran, merely photographing to raise funds, be treated like a criminal? And what caused, just hours later, a Navy fleet to steam into the harbor? Their arrival shook the entire town. The story behind this isn't just about a boat. It's about a secret mission, a buried memory, and the return of honor. Follow this story. And don't forget to subscribe to the Veteran Best Stories channel. Hear the tales that have never been told. The sea sighs. Each gust of wind carries the sting of salt, lashing George's face like silent slaps from the past. He sits motionless on the weathered wooden bench by the harbor. His shadow stretches long across the damp gray ground, torn ragged by sunlight slicing through rows of rusted iron posts. Before him, his small boat, Honor's Wake, is encircled by glaring yellow ceiling tape. It's an invisible sentence. The mast stands silent. The ropes sag like the shackled wrists of an old soldier, no longer able to fight back. George doesn't look at the young soldiers surrounding his boat. He looks at himself, at the dust that has blurred everything he once was. His eyes, clouded by time, by unspoken sorrow, cling to the boat's bow. There, he once sat with the kids he mentored, teaching them about compasses, winds, and loyalty. His breath is heavy. Each inhale struggles as if trying not to slip back to 1968. "I just wanted to help my brothers," he whispers. His voice chokes on the dry ache in his throat. But his words dissolve into the air. No one hears. No one stops to listen. The uniformed men pass by him as if he's just another part of the wind-battered wall, an aging shadow with no value left. A young officer approaches. His polished black boots click coldly on the concrete ground. He stops, standing rigid like a pointing stick. His icy gaze doesn't waver as it meets George's weathered, sun-darkened face. "No permit. You can't do anything." That's all. No explanation. Not a shred of empathy. George tilts his head slightly. His lips curl into a bitter half-smile, as if a laugh tried to escape but couldn't. He bends down. His trembling hands pull the old camera from his jacket pocket. Its metal casing is scratched, but the lens still gleams. It's not just a camera. It's a witness to war, the second eye he carried through hell. He lifts the camera with shaking hands. His fingers, once strong enough to steer through a hail of bullets at Khe Sanh, now struggle to grip the one relic left from those years of living fully. Memories flood back like waves crashing hard. The photographs, blood, mud, the screams of comrades. A young soldier named Harris, flashing his last smile amid falling bombs, just seconds before everything turned silent. Those photos George took that day helped a rescue team locate and save 32 survivors. But no one remembers. No one mentions. His name never appeared in a newsreel or a textbook page. He photographs the boat one last time. Sunlight glints off the camera's lens like a slash across his vision. With each shutter click, his heart seems to sink. He doesn't shoot to protest. He shoots to hold on to something being stolen. Not the boat, a piece of himself. The ropes strain taut. The ceiling tape screeches like a leather whip striking flesh. A young soldier marks the seal with a pen. His gaze is distant, as if he's merely stamping an anonymous parcel. George stands. His back is hunched, but his steps carry something that commands attention. He moves closer, just a few steps from touching the boat's hull, then stops. He says nothing. He doesn't plead. He just looks. Each wooden plank on the boat is a mark of history. The spot where the first kid he taught gripped the helm, trembling as George once did. The spot where a teenager sobbed after his father's accident at sea, and George was the only one to bring him back to shore. To him, that boat is more than a vessel. It's the last shield protecting what remains of the life he sacrificed to preserve. The wind keeps blowing, saltier than ever. George clutches the camera to his chest. A dull pain creeps through his rib cage, slithering up his throat, choking every word. A small sob catches, stifled as if he's swallowed a scream. No one sees, no one pauses. A faint click sounds from the camera, quiet as a final goodbye. The men retreat. The boat is left behind the yellow cords, like a soul imprisoned. George turns. He walks away slowly. Each step echoes further from memory, from faith, from a world he once thought would always make room for those who poured their hearts into protecting it. But there's no applause, no flags, just him, alone, with his shadow stretching behind, silent as the final sunset. The news spreads like a salty sea gust. No need for broadcasts, no need for loudspeakers. Just one person telling the tale, and like a spark meeting the wind, the past begins to stir. From the shadows of memory, people thought long silenced start to emerge. They need no one to call their names. They need no explanation. They hear of George, and they understand. The most striking among them is Colonel Michael. His posture remains as erect as the day he wore his uniform, his silver hair cropped short, his eyes still sharp as a forged blade. He's not a loud man, but when he steps forward, others begin to gather. Michael once stood with George through the brutal years of war. He was the one who dove into gunfire to save a wounded comrade. And now, that old brotherhood flares up. It's as if it never slept. No hesitation, no waiting. He picks up the phone. He quietly calls names his hands have never forgotten. Not one refuses. Just one phrase. George's story. That's enough. They come, one by one, then in groups. Each carries a scar, a memory. A small fleet begins to form, not by orders, but by remembrance. Old ships, once roaring across oceans, are fired up again. One by one, their trembling but proud engines hum. They're like the soldiers steering them. No insignias, no formal commander. Just one reason, a soldier's honor. The ships head toward the harbor. First comes the sound. Waves slap against hulls. Engines rumble like heartbeats in a chest. The wind howls, rushing through faded flags. Then the shapes of the ships appear, faint amid morning mist and spray. They're not modern machines, but something in their movement, slow, resolute, yielding to no one, forces the whole town to hold its breath. People start gathering at the docks. They leave homes, abandon tasks, bring their children. At first, just a few, then dozens, then hundreds. Their steps slow as they see the ships approaching. Whispers ripple along the pier. Who are they? A fleet? No one answers clearly, but every eye turns toward the sea. A small Navy fleet, once a terror on battlefields, returns now, not to fight, but to protect one man. A man buried by silence. A man they owe their loyalty. Cold steel, growling engines, but behind them, human hearts. The ships align neatly, like a parade formation. They glide into Atlantic Bay, stirring the water and shaking the small town. The breath of the past surges in every weathered sail, every drop of oil hitting the water. Witnesses stand speechless. A boy clings to his mother's shoulder, whispering, "Mom, why are they here?" She doesn't answer. She only grips his hand tighter. Above, a flock of seabirds soars, scattering as if moved by an emotion humans can't name. Below, old soldiers stand side by side. They need no words for what they feel. Each ship that docks feels like a full stop to years of silence. As the first bow touches the pier, the wind suddenly stills. A moment of quiet. Not from lack of sound, but because no one dares break something sacred unfolding. The crowd parts, making way. The soldiers step ashore, each with their own gait, their own face, but all sharing one thing, an unyielding gaze. They need no banners, no drums or horns. They just stand there and let their presence speak. No one shouts slogans. No one speaks. But that silence itself weighs heavy on every heart. The fleet carries no weapons. They don't come to threaten. They come to remind everyone that loyalty doesn't die with time, that you can seal a boat, strip a title, but you can't erase what was once true. George isn't there in that first moment, but he'll hear. He'll know, somehow, that his brothers have returned, that he's not alone. And the people standing there, awestruck before that proud formation, will carry a memory no newspaper could capture right. A memory of respect that needs no permission, a parade without fanfare, and a truth that doesn't need recognition to exist. The fleet emerges from the horizon. Their old, weathered hulls stand tall, carrying an unmistakable presence. No fanfare, no signal flares, only the low, gritty hum of engines blending with waves crashing against the shore, like a silent yet powerful declaration. The ship's faded, peeling paint reveals scars of metal. These marks lend them a quiet beauty, not of form, but of history. The harbor grows heavy. The air thickens. It's tense, like a taut string ready to snap. The Coast Guard, young men in crisp uniforms, begin to step back. They form a line. No one speaks. Their eyes betray unguarded confusion, not fear, but a lack of understanding. They're unprepared to face something beyond protocol, beyond orders. And then, in that hush, Michael steps forward. No one tells him to. He moves with steady steps, as if the pier were a trench and ahead lay a different kind of battle, one without bullets, yet fraught with peril. His dark coat sways lightly in the wind. The afternoon sun casts a gleam on old metals, still shining. He doesn't raise a hand, doesn't ask permission. He simply stands. His voice rises, warm but firm, cutting through the biting sea breeze. He doesn't speak much of himself. He doesn't boast of victories. He speaks of a year, 1968, a mission, a forsaken land, and a man. George, then a photographer with the unit. No weapons, no armor, just a camera and unwavering loyalty. In a covert operation deep in a fiery zone, where all communication was severed and every step teetered between life and death, George used his small boat to reach a place no one dared approach. Not to fight, but to capture, through images, truths no one wanted to see. He was there. Michael states this not to brag, but to prove. He's a witness. He saw George navigate that boat through gunfire, hiding behind charred rocks to record what no military gear could reach. The photos George took weren't art. They were life. Blood-drawn maps, condemnations of tactical errors, lifelines for hundreds of trapped soldiers no one knew were there. But then, as with all sensitive wartime matters, those photos were sealed. The camera was confiscated. Pages of reports were stamped classified, locked in vaults no one could access. George was quietly cast into obscurity. The truth he preserved was too delicate to be acknowledged. Liberty Lens, the operation's name, never made it into history books. But it existed. Someone saw it. And now Michael brings it to light. Without delay, he pulls out a stack of documents. Yellowed pages, edges worn, etched with time's fingerprints. He holds them high, not to rally, but to remind. These aren't empty words. This is evidence, a forgotten truth, relics of a mission that without George and his camera on that small boat might have left hundreds unable to return home. No one interrupts him. The young soldiers now stand still. Their initial rigidity fades. One lowers his head, his hands clench. The townsfolk along the pier fall silent. The wind still blows, but it's no longer sharp. It now carries something warmer, a truth just spoken, after too many years buried under the dust of silence and politics. Michael's voice echoes across the harbor like a mighty wave. It reaches the deepest corners of the minds standing there. No clamor, no anger, yet strong enough to sweep away the rigid shell the Coast Guard wears. The young soldiers, trained to obey, now stand silent. Their eyes waver between duty and something deeper. Perhaps compassion, perhaps shame, or perhaps the first time they face a truth not found in training manuals. The harbor air grows thick. Everyone holds their breath. They wait for what comes next. But then, the shift doesn't come from the uniformed ranks. It comes from behind, where the crowd of townsfolk has been gathering, unnoticed, growing denser. They've stood there from the start, quietly watching, listening, witnessing. Now, they're no longer silent. A voice rises from the crowd, faint but clear. Then another, then more. Like a chain reaction, the crowd begins to move. Hands raise handmade signs. The ink still smudges, the words scrawled but bold. Honor the sacrificed. Justice for George. They don't scream. They chant in rhythm, with anger free of hatred. It's the voice of those suppressed too long. These are the town's people, those who've seen George sail out each weekend, teaching kids to grip the helm, to read the wind. They know he's no lawbreaker. He's a keeper of history this country has forgotten. An old woman steps forward from the line. Her frail frame is wrapped in a thick sweater, trembling as she holds up a small photo. The picture is worn, its edges creased, but the figure in it is unmistakable. A young man in uniform, standing beside George. "This is my son," she says, not loudly, but those nearby hear. "He didn't come back, but George did. And if not for him, I wouldn't have this photo to hold every night." Her voice falters in the wind, but her hand doesn't lower. She stands there, as if she, too, is part of the ranks defending George. The pressure mounts. This is no longer a debate. It's not about who's right or wrong. It's a moment when orders shrink before conscience. The Coast Guard, so young, don't know where to look. Some bow their heads, some clench their fists. Then, the commander steps forward. He offers no apology, but the way he exhales deeply, then nods slightly toward George, speaks a silent acknowledgement. The sealed boat, Honor's Wake, has its yellow tape removed. The action is swift, firm, not harsh. It's as if those removing it wished they'd done so sooner. But a condition is set. It can't be used for commerce. No services, no fees. It can only exist as a symbol. A condition delivered in a stern tone, but everyone knows it's the system's final concession, unaccustomed to bending. George doesn't react at once. He stands there, motionless. He can't believe what he's just heard. The wind stings his aged face, weathered by war, by oblivion, and now by a victory too sudden to grasp. His hand tightens around the old camera, the one he's never parted with. His eyes blur. No sobs, no cries. Just tears falling slowly, quietly, down cheeks as rough as parched earth after drought. He doesn't cry for his freedom, nor for the boat's return. He cries because, for the first time in decades, what he did, choices not in textbooks, sacrifices never honored, is seen. Not with medals, not with certificates, but by people. By the community's voice, by the eyes of old comrades, and by the tears of a mother who lost her son, but never forgot who helped her hold on to something. George looks up at the sky. Gray clouds part amid the last rays of daylight. He says nothing. But his eyes, in that moment, as the harbor quiets after the surge of emotion, speak for him. The next day, the sunset drapes the town like a vivid red silk wrapping the sky. The harbor bathes in a strange light. It's no longer as bleak as days before, yet not entirely radiant. It carries a quiet emotion. It's like the man standing silently before his old boat's hull. George says nothing. He only rests his hand on the freshly sanded wood. The scratches from years past remain. Now, they're not symbols of decay, but marks of time, of what truly existed, fought, and proved meaningful. The boat, once sealed with yellow tape, once coldly rejected, now bears a recognized name, Liberty Lens. No longer an anonymous vessel, no longer a forgotten tool. It's reborn, not in clamorous glory, but in a quiet, resolute way. Michael and his old comrades didn't let it be a fleeting victory. They didn't build a monument to be overgrown with weeds. They did something practical. They turned the boat into an art center for veterans. No grand ceremony, no flashy banners, just wood, metal, and memory. On the deck, George's photos are carefully hung. Each one captures a historical moment, a piece of a story never fully told. No embellishments, no modern effects, just truth, preserved as it was captured, raw, painful, but weighty. People don't come for artistic inspiration. They come to understand, to listen, to be silent. The war stories told here don't aim to deepen wounds, to blame, or to stir hatred. They're told to heal, not just for those who carried rifles, but for those left behind, who never knew what truly happened in history's shadows. On a small wooden table at the cabin's end, a notebook lies for visitors to share their thoughts. Many write a few lines, some leave it blank. Some pen entire letters, thanking George, not for being a hero, but for preserving truth for the next generation. Some mention their fathers, some mention a brother lost. One simply writes, I see myself in this photo. George reads them all. He doesn't write replies. He doesn't need to speak. His presence there each evening, his hand gently tracing the boat's hull as if hearing its whispers, is enough. It tells those who board that this isn't a museum. This is a soul given back its name. That evening, he stands quietly at the boat's bow. His hand still touches the old wood. His eyes gaze at the sea, where the last red light meets the water. A gentle breeze passes, just enough to stir his coat. In that moment, no one approaches him. Everyone understands. He's hearing echoes others can't. Perhaps the engines hum in the jungle, the cries of comrades in smoke and fire, or the single shutter click in the dark that saved hundreds of lives. Or maybe just the whisper of a once rejected boat, now alive again, not for a government, but for a community that values what's right. George's story, and Liberty Lens, isn't a myth spun from tales. It's real. It's real scratches on real skin. It's real solitude that stretched decades before being seen. And this story isn't just for soldiers. It's for anyone who's felt their voice drowned out, their worth dismissed, who chose silence believing no one would stand with them. This story reminds us, injustice can strike like an unforecasted storm. But if courage is great enough, if someone dares to stand, if hands join and say, "We still remember," then miracles can happen. Not in fairy tales, but in real life. And if you're hearing this story, you hold a piece of that miracle. Share it. Tell it to others. Let what George preserved through silent sacrifice never be forgotten again. This isn't just one veteran's story. It's a nation's reminder. Those who fight for justice, even in silence, deserve the world's ear.